Good morning. Mike Rhodes here with Module 4 of AdWords Academy. Don't know where Brian is, so we're just going to start because you're all here on time. I'm here on time, so we'll just get going. I need to show you my screen, and once that bit's done, start the presentation, and starting on the right slide would probably help. All right, if you can just throw a Y or a yes into the chat pad, which is all I can see. I can't see the question pad at the moment, so don't throw anything in there. I won't be able to answer that. Can't do that while I'm doing the keynote bit, sorry. But if you can chuck a Y or a yes just to let me know that you can hear me okay and see my screen, which should say number 4, campaigns. And once I know that you can see that, if somebody would, that would be lovely. Anybody? Into the chat pad of the GoToMeeting control panel. Just let me know that you can hear me and see me, please, because otherwise this is going to be a very short call. Okay, I can't believe nobody is going to do that. I'm going to struggle if that's the case. All right, yeah, question pad, no good. I can't get to the question pad easily, but thank you for chucking a Y in there, Robert and Howard. I need to get out of that bit, so I won't be able to use that. So you can hear me and you can see me. Right, breathe. Welcome to Module 4. This week we're going to talk about campaigns. Your mind map is already loaded up to the members area on the Google+. You can go grab that PDF, and the slides are there. Also, if you want to grab those, print those out, follow along, feel free. So we'll start with a quick overview of what we're going to look at. Today I want to talk about why you want more than one campaign. I still see a large number of campaigns that only have one campaign in them, so we'll talk about why you might want more than one, and I'll show you our typical list that we pick and choose from. And most accounts that we run pretty much all of these, but I'll tell you the reasons for the different campaigns that we run and therefore what you might want to run as well. We'll spend the bulk of today going through the various settings, what they are, why you'd use them. I'll talk about bid modifiers, which is obviously a thing that came out with enhanced campaigns, which was, what was that, July 2013. So they've been around a fair while now, but if you haven't been back to AdWords in a year and a half, you may not be as familiar with bid modifiers. They're not the most intuitive thing in the world. And then we'll talk about how to go build all of these campaigns in your account. So settings in detail, we're going to spend a fair bit of time on that. When we get to the building part, I'm going to give you 3 options there. The first one you're familiar with, because that's what you've been using up to this point, the AdWords interface itself in your browser. We'll talk about AdWords Editor, but I really want to focus on, I'm going to go into detail on how you can use Editor with a spreadsheet, be that Excel or Google Docs. And there was a comment, I think it was Stephen, forgive me, I can't remember your surname, in the community about whether this would focus on the management of an existing account or more so the building of new campaigns. So this one is more about the building of new campaigns using the information that you have gained over the past couple of weeks. You've done your keyword research and you've got a massive sheet of paper or a spreadsheet or something like that with a big list of keywords on there and negative keywords ideally. You've got some ads written. Now we need to bolt all of those pieces together. However, if you have been running AdWords for a while, what you may find in going through this is that actually you want to rebuild an entire new campaign, and so this will obviously give you the same information. But it's not so much about little tweaks to existing campaigns that you may have. This will give you the foundation to do that, and we'll cover that in a lot more detail in week 8. All right, so why do we have more than one? The 3 main reasons that you would have different campaigns. And the first is budget. So if you have 2 groups of keyword, and we've talked about brand and non-brand, so we're all familiar with that terminology now. You've got these 2 different groups. I never want my brand campaign to bump up against that budget limitation. And so, well, let's back up. The problem, if I had an ad group of brand keywords and an ad group of non-brand keywords, and I had all of that mixed in the one campaign, and I've set my campaign budget, whatever that might be, if I bump up against that budget, I can no longer control which ad group gets to show its ads. Everything is capped, everything is limited, which doesn't give me a very good result. If I split those ad groups out, and I now have a brand campaign and a non-brand campaign, now I've got that control. I can set my budget much higher on my brand campaign. I might want to limit my non-brand campaign, which is probably going to be less profitable. And depending on whatever constraint you may have in the business, remember we talked about we want these to be unlimited ideally, but if there is a constraint in the business, be that a physical constraint or a cash constraint, then you may want to dial AdWords down a bit. That's obviously one of the wonderful features of AdWords, that it's this tap that we can turn up or down at will. If things get too busy, great problem to have. And if it's going to take you a while to build that capacity in the business, i.e. go hire more talent, then you can wind AdWords down for a little bit, or you want to take 4 weeks off over Christmas and you want to shut the business right down, you can wind it right down. You can adjust those budgets to adjust the number of leads and sales that you get. The second reason is geography. So all averages, or all numbers in your AdWords account are averages, and all averages lie. So if I have one campaign that's targeting all countries and territories, then the numbers that I'm going to see at a campaign level, and even when I dig into my ad groups and my keywords, all of those averages are going to give me potentially misleading data. Let's take a couple. Your average position might be 3 for that campaign as a whole, but you might be in position 1 in Azerbaijan, and you might be in position 7 in the US, because you're bidding the same in these two very different places with very different levels of competition. So if you want to show ads in more than one country, I would suggest that you have a campaign for each. Now you can go more granular than that. So we've got a client here in Australia, and they want to show different ads in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. And so we have 3 different campaigns, so that the Melbourne campaign I can target to Melbourne, but more importantly I can mention Melbourne in the ad, which we know from our testing gets a higher click-through rate. Why? Because it's more relevant to the user, and I can control which page that ad goes to, so I can take those people to a Melbourne specific landing page on that client website, which of course again more relevant and therefore going to get me a better result in terms of my conversion rate. Yes, it probably helps quality score, but I'm designing for humans first. First and foremost, I'm focused on profit, and I'm focused on that conversion rate for that user. And then lastly, network. So there are 3 networks that we'll talk about as we go through this today. There's Google Search, which we all know and love, so google.com or .co.uk or .com.au or whichever country you're in. Those ads that show across the top and down the side of Google. There's the Search Partner Network, which we've talked about already. It's either all on or all off. We know now how to segment our numbers. We know about the segment drop down and the segment by top versus other. There's also another segment in there which is segment by networks with Search Partner, bit of a mouthful, but that will show you your relative performance on Google versus Search Partners. Now, if you didn't know that setting was there before you started this course, then you will almost certainly be running ads on Search Partners, because that's the default setting when you start a new campaign. Segment your data, look at that performance. If it's worse than you're getting on Google Search, then turn Search Partners off. If it's about the same or better, and it can often be better, then you're going to leave that on. But it's all on or all off. You can't really do much about that. The other network obviously is the Google Display Network. So if we're going to have display ads running, which we're going to cover in week 7, I'll touch on those today, then they all need to go into their own campaign, because again, completely different beast. It's a totally different way of setting up the campaign, and all of those averages are going to be very different. The average position, for instance, for an image ad campaign is going to be position 1. Now, if you've got that mixed in with your non-brand search that lives in position 5, obviously all of those numbers are then completely meaningless. So they're the main reasons: budget, geography, and network. So now let's run through our list of the typical campaigns that we will run for most campaigns for most clients. And we'll start with brand. So there is a perennial argument about whether or not you should have a brand campaign. There was a question just this morning on the Google Plus community of, should I run ads if I'm already in position 1 organically? I've linked on the forum to a blog post that we wrote a few months ago of why I think it is a very good idea. Briefly, Levi's here. So they've got the top ad. I'm searching for Levi's. I want to find Levi's. But obviously there are other people. We can see Jack's Threads here and The Iconic, who obviously both sell Levi's. Now, those ads at the top, we know, are going to get maybe 10, maybe even 15% of the clicks. If Levi didn't have their brand ad running at the top, they would potentially lose a chunk of traffic to their 3 competitors, because there would be 3 ads here for 3 people that sell Levi's, and yes, they still make some money from that, but people wouldn't be coming through to Levi's site, and obviously they make more money if you go direct to them. You can see also, and this is sort of pretty typical if you're looking on a tablet certainly, or a laptop, with the search results these days, that top organic, which is the bottom left link down there, the top organic listing is the only one above the fold. That's pretty common. So Levi's are going to get many more clicks if they run that brand ad anyway. It's also a blocking strategy. If you run ads, Google is less likely to show ads for other people because of quality score. It knows that you are by far the most relevant person to show ads for your brand. You're going to get 9s, probably 10 out of 10 for quality score. We'll talk a lot more about quality score in a couple of weeks in the next module. It also knows that the bulk of your competitors are not Levi's in this case. Yes, you sell Levi's, but you're not Levi's. It's therefore less relevant, therefore a lower quality score, therefore more expensive for those other people to show ads. And this is much more the case if we're talking about an actual name of a business rather than a brand that many people can sell, because this is Jack's Threads are obviously resellers of Levi's, so it's a little bit different. But it is a great idea. Normally, the far the most profitable campaign that you can run. Very cheap clicks because your quality is so high. Super cheap sales or leads. You'd be mad not to do it. It's a false saving to try and save a few pennies to not run these ads. So we always run brand. So next we're going to have our main campaign or campaigns, and this is where you may have multiple copies, or it might start out as a copy of these campaigns. So for instance, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, or San Francisco, Chicago, New York, or you might have USA, UK, and Italy. Might be copies of roughly the same campaign. Obviously change your ad text accordingly for the country. But the main is going to be, this is going to be for your non-brand search. Now sometimes we'll split this up. So we've got a client that sells doors, windows, awnings and shutters. So they will be 4 main campaigns. Now you don't have to do that. You could lump all of those ad groups together. But again, we want to be able to control budget differently. So if he's, depending on the season, depending on what he's got on sale, we might want to whack the budget up high for doors and have doors run unlimited. Meanwhile, don't want to sell many shutters at the moment, got a problem with the factory, let's wind the budget down on that. So again, by splitting this out, we get more control. I'm sorry I can't see the question pad. I'm sure there are questions coming in. Hopefully Brian will jump on this. Worst case, I'll open that up right at the end if I can, and I'll run through a bunch of questions then. I maybe have to see the chat pad if there's not a flood of questions there. So if you've got a really pressing question, look for the little drop down on your control panel where it says chat other than questions, and try me on there. and I might be able to see that and answer as I go, but I can only keep half an eye on that, otherwise I get completely distracted because I'm a bloke and we only do one thing at once. Right, competitor campaign. So this is the flip side of your brand campaign. I've said that other people could go and bid on Levi's. So here we have Kent Removal Storage. So they're bidding on their own brand. So that top ad, for them, that's a brand campaign. But for the next, or for all of the other people you can see on the screen, Moving Select, Transcorp Removals, Super Cheap Storage, and That's Quick over there on the right-hand side. Excuse me. And those guys are running a competitor campaign. If they're smart, they haven't got it mixed in with all of their non-brand in their main campaign. Split those out because the numbers are going to be very different. Quality is going to be low, and they're going to bid on competitor keywords. Now, this is a little bit of a grey area. In some industries, this is frowned upon, and some industries even have gentlemen's agreements where, you know, we won't bid on you if you don't bid on us. But pretty much the gloves are off most of the time. You can bid on anything you like, even if it is a trademark term. So if Kent Removal Storage is a trademark term, Moving Select and the others here are completely allowed to bid on that inside the rules of the Google system. What you can't do is use deceptive and misleading conduct and appear to be Kent Removal Storage. So never, ever, ever use DKI, which is dynamic keyword insertion, for your ads in your competitor campaign. If Storage Canterbury over here on the right were using DKI, the headline of that ad would be Kent Removal Storage, and that's going to get them in trouble. Not so much with Google, but with Kent Removal Storage lawyers, who are going to send a cease and desist letter if they're nice, and probably another letter if they're not so nice. So don't use dynamic headlines, but we love competitor campaigns. Think about it. If your brand campaign are going to be the cheapest leads or sales that you can get, and your non-brand search are at the other end of the scale, whatever number that is for you, competitors are almost always going to sit somewhere in between those two, and often right down towards the end where brand campaigns live, i.e. the cheap end of that scale. You can often pick up a lot of cheap leads, cheap sales. And why would that be? Well, if you think about the brand campaign, the reason it's so profitable is if I'm searching for somebody or something by name, then I've pretty much already made up my mind. I've been referred, or I've done my research, and I'm pretty much at the pointy end of the funnel, credit card in hand. If I'm searching for storage, or I'm searching for removalist, I have no idea yet who I'm after. But if I'm searching for Kent Removal Storage, I'm probably just about to make a decision. Now, sure, there are some people searching for these guys who are existing customers or who are phoning to complain, whatever it might be, but there's a bunch of people who are just about to go book with them. And if you can get in front of that traffic at the pointy end of the funnel, and yes, it's going to cost you more per click than it's going to cost Kent because your quality score is going to be much lower than theirs is, but still, if you can get in front of them, because the conversion rates are generally quite high on this sort of traffic, your CPAs are often very, very good, even though quality may not be. Now, shopping campaigns we'll cover in more detail in a couple of weeks as well in the next module, module 5. But just calling that out now, because shopping campaigns, they need to go into their own campaign. You actually have no choice over that, but that will be a separate campaign if you want to run shopping. And dynamic search ads. So this is a relatively new option, been around about a year or so, where Google essentially are offering to fill in the gaps in your keyword list. So you load up this and you point Google in the right direction at your website or at a page or a subset of your website, but let's just keep it easy for now. Point it at your website, and then when somebody searches for something that's not already a keyword in your account, Google will look at that, they'll look at the keywords in your account, look at that search query and say, well, based on what we found on your website, we think this would be a great person to go show ads to, but you don't have the keyword in here, so we're just going to butt in here and we're just going to show this ad anyway, and then you can tell us later whether or not we should have done that. I.e., you can look through the search query report. We talked about this last week. You can look through the search query report of your DSA campaign and find all of the search terms that triggered your ads, your DSA ads, to show. And then if you don't agree that that ad should have shown, then you can go add those as negatives. So it's a great place to trawl for negatives. When this launched, we didn't have much success with this at all. It would show for really random things. We had a client who had a bunch of case studies on their site. So one of the case studies might have been for, gosh, I can't even remember, but it was a government site. And so we had all of these random government search terms that were triggering the DSA ads in that campaign because Google had found that content on the website. So one, they've improved their system. Two, we've got smarter about how we do this. Most people are not going to use it, so I'm not going to go into massive detail on DSA, but if you want to give it a try, it's not one of those things that you're going to add into your first campaign that you ever run, but it can work well. It can also blow out, which is why I'm not going to go into detail and I'm not going to recommend it if you're new to AdWords. But if you're a bit more of a veteran and you've been doing this for a while and you're looking for that final 5%, another thing to try, to just try and squeeze a bit more out of your AdWords account, then give DSA a try. My tip would be don't point it to the entire domain, point it to a small subset of your site. So don't let it see the whole site, just let it see your landing pages or your sales pages, for instance. And then I do need to mention this again, we'll talk a lot more about remarketing in week 7, but remarketing lists for search ads, I mentioned them the other day, RLSA. So this is a way where you can change the bid based on the fact that somebody is on your remarketing list, but change the bid for your search ads. So it's not about showing a remarketing ad or an image ad, display ad. It's about changing the bid for your search ads based on the fact that you know they're on a remarketing list. So you can add a new campaign to target these people, or you can just change the bid of an existing brand or main or competitor. Love using this for competitor campaigns, and just change the bid there. Why competitor campaigns, to finish that thought off? Well, somebody has already been to your site, so therefore they're probably in the market, and now they're going looking for one of your competitors. So this is a great time to get back in front of that person. You want to bid this one a bit higher, and also you might want to change the messaging around that because you know they've been to your site, but you know they're about to go looking for that competitor. This might be the time to get a little bit more aggressive with your ad copy, depending on how you want to play. Now, if you want to show different ads, it needs to be in a separate campaign. If you only want to change the bid, you can layer RLSA over the top of your brand or main or competitor campaigns. We'll talk more about that a little later, and we'll talk about all of these in Module 7. So these are all of the different types of display campaign that we'll run, and we'll talk about those another day. All right, let's dive into settings. I'm still not seeing anything in the chat window, so I'm going to assume there are no questions. I apologize again, I cannot see the question pad while I'm presenting Keynote. Can't do both at the same time. So, first thing you need to do, obviously, is to pick a name. Now, I'll show you the naming convention that we use. I don't care what naming convention you use, as long as you use one. Having a sensibly named conversion helps so many ways. Obviously helps for you to manage the account, but it also helps then if you have other people, other team members involved managing their account. It also makes a lot more sense if you're looking at the data in analytics. You'll have a much better idea of what is what. We use this convention where we have the type of the campaign first, and then the geography that that campaign is running in, and then the network that it's running on. So an S or a PS if it's running on partners as well as search, or a D for the display network. And because we split everything out into image ads and display ads, we have that separate. We'll have a DI for display image or a DT for display text. So let's talk about the types of campaigns. So I've talked about the types, all of the different types that you can use when you set up a new campaign. This is the first thing you need to do, is to choose the type. Little tip, by the way, choose the type from the drop-down before you name the campaign. It's really stupid how this works on the campaign settings tab, but if you name it and then you go into here and you change the type, it wipes the name out. So pick the type first and then name your campaign. And I'm going to go through, there's a little drop-down box that you can see there, it's search network only. I'm going to go through the 4 options that are on that drop-down box. I'm not going to talk massively about these, but the main thing I want to say is at the top you've got choices between standard and all features. Please always use all features. Never use the standard option at the top. It just reduces the options you have available later on, and you won't be able to change it later on. So always use all features. You'll notice here that we've got some mobile app stuff. This is where you choose the DSA campaign if you want to try that. And I do need to mention call only, which launched just a few days ago. This is an interesting development that is coming here. Well, has arrived in your account already, but we talked, I think it was last week, about click to call only ads. So you have the, or you had, well you still have, up until June this year, the ability to show an ad with that call extension. Remember we went through all of the call extensions and we talked about how that shows on a mobile device. The call extension is the little box over on the right hand side that says call, that you can see on the screenshot here. Typically, the default way of setting it up, the headline of the ad is going to be a link that goes through to the website. And I said if your website looks crap on a mobile device, then use click to call only, or that option where it says just the phone number in the settings of the call extension. Well, that option is being retired in a few weeks' time, in June of this year. And they're replacing it with this call only campaign. Now, I'm a bit cynical when it comes to this stuff, and I see this as a bit of a money grab by Google. It's partly a way of saying, yeah, okay, here we messed up a bit with enhanced campaigns, and here you go, you can now have a mobile only campaign again, which you haven't been able to have for the last year and a half. But the main difference here, you can see from the screenshot there that the headline is the phone number, so they have no option to come through to the website. If you click on this ad, you get that call or cancel dialog box will pop up on your phone. But the main difference here is the way that this is bid. So instead of having a bid modifier for mobiles as a whole, where you can say, okay, yep, mobiles are really important to me, bid up 300%. I'll talk about bid modifiers later on as we go through in probably half an hour or so. So stick with me if you have no idea what bid modifiers are at this point. But you were able to change the bid, modify the bid to say, I want to bid twice as much on mobiles. But that was for clicks and calls. With call only, the bid modifier now says, I want to spend more to get phone calls, because clicks don't really exist here. If they click the ad, that leads to a call. It doesn't mean every single click is a call, just to be really precise, because people get that dialog box up, call or cancel. They can still cancel, and yes, you've already paid at that point. But let's assume that at least half that press the call button here, then press the call button on that dialog box. You're bidding now for phone calls. So what I suspect will happen here is a whole bunch of people will up their bids and start to bid more and more. Google makes a bunch more money, and only the advertisers that know about these settings win. So it's available in your account now. The old system is getting retired in June. I recommend you get ahead of the curve and have a play with those at some point in the next few weeks. The next option on that drop-down is display network. Again, we will go through all that in a lot more detail in Module 7. The next option is shopping. So I've shown the shopping ads already. There's no sub-options under that. If you want to show these shopping ads, if I refer to them as PLAs, apologies, but that's the old name for them, product listing ads, which I still tend to call them. But the shopping ads, you choose a shopping campaign. And then this last one, search network with display select. Now, if you've been doing AdWords for a while, you'll remember back in the day, this is one of the first things that Perry and I and Brian taught, was that you need to split your search and display networks apart, because the default setting back in the day was to create one campaign all lumped together and your ads ran on both networks. Well, this is almost a move back to that style, where Google is saying, but it's a little different. Google is saying, we'll show your ads on search, and then if we think it's appropriate, we may also show your text ad on a GDN site. Now I'm going to talk about display select. You may have noticed on my big list of GDN campaigns that we use, we love display select. So it's at this point it is a private beta. You need to have your Google rep whitelist your account for this, where you can have display select only. So no search network component, but just display select. Very briefly, display select says, I'm going to give Google a list of keywords. It's a little like search remarketing. I'm going to give Google a list of keywords. If somebody has searched for one of those keywords, just like a regular campaign, don't show them a search ad, but in that session, whatever session means to Google, let's just say it's somewhere in the next half an hour to 4 hours, give or take, but in that next session, if that person ends up on a Google Display Network site as part of their session, then show them this banner ad, please Google. Now we're having a lot of success with that, so it's particularly with competitors. So think back to our competitor search campaign. You're saying if someone searches for my competitor, then show them this ad. I can't use deceptive or misleading conduct. I can't pretend to be that competitor, and that competitor is going to notice that ad pretty quickly and may send me a nasty letter from their lawyer. Now with display select, someone searches for that competitor name, they don't see your search ad, but over the course of the next couple of hours, they bump into your ad in a couple of places around the Google Display Network, be that on Livestrong or Oprah or YouTube or Google Finance. Very, very powerful way to get in front of those people that you know are searching for specific things. I'll talk more about display select in Module 7, but it is a lot of fun. But I'm going to say blanket, never, ever, ever use search network with display select, because you do not get the control. And the clue is in the Google Help Center. This is the option recommended to newer advertisers. In other words, you don't know what you're doing, we'll take your cash, thanks for playing. Just don't use it. If you've gone through this course, you have more knowledge than 95, probably 98% of people using Google AdWords. Run your search and display campaigns separately. Last thing on display select, I said you've got to be whitelisted for it, but the reason that I'm going to share it all in week 7, module 7, is because that is due out of that private beta fairly soon. I've been told Q1, which could mean this month, it could mean next month, it could mean April, but soon that option will be available to everyone to have a display select only campaign, and they are good fun. Network, I think we've already covered this really. You can have Google search, you can have Google search with search partners, or you can have display. I'm going to suggest that for your first couple of campaigns, you choose just Google search. So you go into this network option, and all of these screen grabs I'm showing you are the campaign settings when you create a new campaign, or if you're rebuilding an existing one. I'm going to suggest you take the tick out of the box next to include search partners. It means cleaner data, better data, and your numbers are really what they say they are. So when you're starting out, turn off search partners. Now device is still listed in the list of campaign settings, but quite honestly it's not really an option anymore. You actually don't have the option to turn ads off on tablet, display and tablet, and joined at the hip. Google doesn't differentiate between the two. And mobile is always on. The way you turn mobile off, if you want to, is to use a bid modifier. So I'll cover that when we get to bid modifiers. Location. So we've already said that different locations are one of the main reasons that you'll have different campaigns. So I just want to show you that some of the different options of choosing a location, and if you, this might be the time to tune back in if you've been tuning out because you think I know all of this. There are a couple of new options in here that you may not have seen before. if you're a bit more of a seasoned AdWords pro. So if you want to target a city, and you search, as we have done here, for Chicago, you'll notice the reach of that is 13 million. I won't go into what that number means, but let's just use it as a reference point. You'll notice that that really is pretty much just downtown Chicago. It's really sort of the city of Chicago as defined by the city limits. That can often be quite limiting. Now, it's probably a great place to start, but if you want a bit more traffic of people that are just a bit further down the road, then look for the nearby. So if you look on the underneath targeted locations on the right hand side where we've got the line of Chicago, over on the side there we've got remove or nearby. If you click on nearby, you'll see all of these other nearby locations listed. The interesting one for me is right down at the bottom. So you've got a couple of sections here. You've got nearby locations and then enclosing locations. If you look underneath enclosing down there, second line, we've got, sorry, I should have had a red box around this, Chicago, Illinois, United States, Nielsen DMA. 20 million reach now instead of 13 million. We add that, then Google changes the picture. And now we're saying, okay, this is probably a little bit more like I thought I was going to get when I said Chicago, and it's almost twice as many people that I get to reach if I target this DMA, which is a Nielsen thing. We don't need to worry about that. It's just a different way of defining the region. Think of it as Greater Chicago versus downtown Chicago. So if you want to expand your reach a little bit, check the settings of your own campaigns that are already running and see if one of those enclosing locations might make sense for you to run. That's all under the search option across the top. You see we've got 4 options across the top: search, radius, location, and bulk. So the next is radius. And this is another way that you can target. Gives you sort of less control, but often an easy way to do it. So you can stick a pin in the map and say show ads within 100 miles of here. Now that's much more accurate in the States than it is here, say, in Australia. The UK is sort of somewhere in between. Targeting beyond the city level in Australia, not particularly good, but radius targeting is an easy way to do it. I will often add more than one, so I'll often add downtown Chicago plus Greater Chicago plus 20 miles or 50 miles around Chicago, just to cover all the bases and make sure that I'm showing ads to the people inside that circle. Now, location groups, this is where it gets fun. So if you go into location groups, so that third option across the top of the screen, under that drop-down box now you've got 3, really it's listed as 4, but it's essentially 3 options here. Places of interest, if you want to target airports and universities, should you want to do that for whatever reason, they're the main things listed under places of interest. Have a look in your local area, see if there's anything interesting there for you, no pun intended. Generally, we don't use that. The interesting one for me is locations by demographics. If you choose that option, top right on your screen now, you now have to choose an area for it to look within. So we've chosen location by demographics, and then we've said within the state of Illinois. And now I have this little drop-down box where I can target people by average income. Now, this is nowhere near as accurate as Facebook's income targeting, but it does give you some other options. And you can see here I've added the top 10% and that second slice, which is 11 to 20%. So it goes through here in 10% chunks, and then you have the bottom 50% if you want to target the bottom 50% of income earners. It's an interesting thing to test, particularly if you have low budgets and if you were trying to target, top end of town, luxury buyers, then why not target the people that Google thinks have more money to spend? So that's under location groups. And then still the location groups is that other option where we choose location extensions from the drop down. Now the interesting thing about this one is that you can add multiple bids. So We talked about location extensions last week. If you have a location extension added to your campaign, you can see that the account I used for this screen grab does not, because it says these targets will only work after you've added them. If you have a location extension added and you need your Google My Business page set up in order to do that, then you can put a radius around each location extension and say, change my bid. I'll show you how to do the bidding part in a second. The cool thing about this is you can actually have multiple radii around each location extension. So you can see here I've added 2 miles around, 5 miles around, and 10 miles around. Why would you do that? Well, because you might want to bid that differently. So at 2 miles, you might want to bid that at, let's say, $6 a click. 5 miles around, maybe you want to drop that bid down to $3. And 10 miles around, maybe you want to drop that bid down to 50 cents. And then Google will, again, this, for me, I would only be doing this if I'm in the States. I would not trust this to work in Australia. I tried to get an answer for you before this call from Google on how this would work in the UK or Canada, and they really didn't know. We went round and round in circles for about 30 minutes, and they had no idea. But in the States, I know that the location targeting is much more accurate. So if you have got location extensions already added to your account, or you're setting up your Google My Business page, and if you wanted to do this, I think this would work best for chains that maybe have multiple locations, and you want to say, if somebody is very close to my location, then I'm going to bid this higher. And then the last option is bulk locations. So you can load up a big list here, up to 1,000 at a time. So if you have a big spreadsheet, you can load all that up, even down to the zip code level that you can see there. Whack that in and add them all at once. And the other thing we need to cover with the geography setting is you have this little option just underneath that. Again, all of this is on the campaign settings screen, where you can target and exclude certain people. So let's just quickly cover this, because this does often cause some confusion. So you can target people in, or searching for, or viewing pages about, let's say, Chicago. Now, that's the default option. If you choose that option, let's say someone is searching for Chicago lawyer. If they're in New York, they are still eligible to see your ad because they're searching for pages about Chicago lawyer, even though their current location is outside of that place. If you change to the second option, then you will only show ads to people that are physically in Chicago when they do that search. And if you want to go broader, then you can go people searching for or viewing. I can't see why you would use that, generally speaking. You're probably going to choose one of the top two. If you feel that there's a bit of waste in your account, maybe budgets are fairly skinny, then often changing to only people in my targeted location can often give you just a little bit of a bump and improve the quality of your traffic a little bit. If you're experiencing fraud, particularly still lots of overseas clicks, then that's a good one to choose. But you can also exclude people in certain locations. So you may have noticed when we were looking at that Chicago example on the map earlier, when I search for a location, I've got the option to either add or exclude that. So that's how you set it up. You have to first search for it, choose the exclude option, and then come into here and say exclude people in my excluded location, second option, or again, people in, searching for, or viewing my excluded location. Generally default is fine for that one. Language, well, you pretty much got two options there. You go with the main language that's spoken in the place that you're targeting, or you can choose all languages. Generally, I find it doesn't make a huge difference unless you're in a very, very multicultural location, in which case, and if you're running just English ads with just English language ads and just an English language website, then the safe option is probably to flick it onto just English. If you're in Canada, you might want to run English and French. Generally, I don't run all languages just because I feel there's probably going to be a bit more waste when I do that, and possibly the chance for a bit more fraud in the account. Bidding. All right, So when you get down to this part of your campaign settings, Google is going to want to run things for you. And it's going to recommend that you don't choose the manual option. I'm going to disagree with Google because my job is to look after your wallet, and you want to change that to say, I will manually set my bids for clicks. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be in charge here. I would suggest you don't put it onto the auto bidding options. Now, enhanced can often work for you. Probably don't start with that because, again, you've got less control. But if you've a bit more experience, then test it, see what happens to results. We will talk about Conversion Optimizer, CO, down there in week 6. And then the last option, you have these things called Flexible Bid Strategies. Now, these are set up in a different part of your account, down at the bottom left of your screen where you've got Shared Library, which is where we go to set up our remarketing lists. One of the options under Shared Library is Bid Strategies, and you have these 6 options currently. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I do want to focus on a couple that I think may be useful to you, particularly if you're a bit more advanced with AdWords. And again, we haven't spoken about conversion tracking yet, so if you don't have conversion tracking set up, again, we'll cover that in Module 6, then ignore this for now, but I want to cover this now because it's campaign settings and all things to do with campaigns. Then, yeah, we need to have this covered now. Sorry, a bit of noise in the office, we'll sort that out. Target CPA, so CPA, cost per action, in other words, cost per lead, cost per sale. So you can tell Google to set a target, might be $50, might be 500, might be 3, whatever it is that you're aiming for, and Google will take over the bidding for you to try and reach that target that you've set. Now, it's a target, not a maximum. You used to have the option for both, now it's just target. So let's say you were aiming for $50, you would probably go 50 or a little bit higher. The more wiggle room you give it, the more chance you have of letting Google go find that traffic and be profitable. Now, it may go over a little bit, but it will learn over time, and it does do a reasonable job of adjusting over time. If you're too conservative with your target bid, then you'll just hardly get any traffic. Google just will choose not to show your ad rather than blow the target. So the more wiggle room you can give it, the better. And a really good tip, if you are using this, is to adjust your campaign with this target, not with the budget. So if you want more traffic, you increase the target. If you want less traffic, you decrease the target. Make Google work harder to find that good quality traffic rather than moving the budget up and down, which, assuming you're not hitting it, won't actually do much. This is a pretty new one. I can't think that anybody on this call will actually use this, other than to talk about it with clients and make them realize that they want to use their ego instead of their brains to run the accounts, which is where you hand the account back to them, shake their hand and say, good luck to you, I'll be over here when you want to make some money. Target outranking share uses the data that you have in your auction insights report, which is not something we've covered yet. We will cover that in week 8, which is where you can see how other advertisers are performing. At a rough level, you can see how often they show their ads and when you outrank each other. In other words, when they show an ad above you or when you show an ad above them. This bid strategy lets you bid based on how much you want to outrank a particular competitor. So you give the strategy a name at the top, you choose a competitor domain from the drop-down, so it will pre-populate that drop-down with the data from your auction insights. I've not shown that here because I'd have to blur the whole thing out anyway. And then you give it a target. So you say, okay, in 80% of the auctions, I would like to show my ad higher than this particular competitor. Think back to Kent removals and moving select underneath them. Kent might come in here and say, I want to be moving select 90% of the time. Don't care what it costs me, I just want to show an ad higher than them. Then this is how they can do it. And then you can either choose to let Google have full control, automatic bidding, or manual bidding, where you have a bit more control, but Google is allowed to adjust things. And I would recommend that you set a fail-safe maximum bid limit. So if you're normally bidding around $5, maybe you set a fail-safe in there of 10, just so Google doesn't go completely doolally and melt your credit card for you. You do have the advanced options on many of these where you can say, don't raise my bids if it's a low quality score. The reason being is if you choose the option of raise bids, even if the QS is low, you may end up spending a lot more than you were intending to. So I would always leave that on the recommended setting. And then the last one here is target ROAS, which stands for return on ad spend. Now, again, more of an advanced one, but we'll cover it because it's part of campaigns and therefore it belongs in this module, but we haven't talked about conversions yet, and we certainly haven't talked about conversion values. To use this bid strategy, you must be using conversion values, which we'll cover in module 6. Assuming that you are using values, you then have this number in your account. So let's say that you get a lead and it's worth $100 to you. You can then get a number in your account that says for every dollar you've spent in this campaign for this keyword, whatever level you want to look at, you have made $5.6 or 1.1 or 23.7, whatever it might be. You can then use that number, which is called conversion value over cost. You can use that number in here and say, I want to target a specific number. I want to target a specific return on my ad spend. And again, if all of that was gobbledygook, don't worry, we'll cover that more in module 6. All right, budgets. Budgets. Quick drink of water. Magic number here is 30.4, because that's the number of days in a month if you're a maths geek and you work at Google. So what Google say with budgets is that if you were to start at $20 a day, they can go 20% higher on any particular day. So they could go up to $24 on a day, and that's why you may see your spend occasionally be a little bit higher than you think you've set your budget at. That's fine. Google allows that in the rules. Can go up to 20% higher, but it will not go over 30.4 times that daily budget in the month. $608, 30.4 times 20. So it can go up to 20% higher on a day, but it won't go more than 30.4 in the month. Now, if you want to have a look at this in your, and again, you can do this at the campaign level in your account. If you go to the column chooser, which we've already covered, and look for a column there, it's in a section called competitive metrics, and you add this column, lost impression share due to budget. We've already covered impression share, so I won't explain that again here for the sake of time. And you can look for the campaigns where you are losing impressions because your budget is too low. Because that limited by budget thing under the status column will not always pop up. So don't rely on that popping up to let you know. Use that lost impression share due to budget. If that number is, I'm going to say probably more than 10%, you might want to dig in and have a look. And if you click on that little histogram icon next to limited by budget, you'll get a little option like this, where you can see here the middle line here, my budget for this campaign is currently $100, and Google is saying you could whack your budget up to $300 and I can get you all of these extra clicks. Now, if you're really good at maths, you've already noticed that those extra clicks are going to cost me more per click than the first 50. So this is all economics 101, marginal cost, marginal revenue stuff. Let's not go there. Too much maths for this late in the day, wherever you are in the world, or this early in the day if you're in Australia. Just assume that if you want more traffic, you can whack the budget up, and Google's going to give you a little bit of a guide as to how much. Which leads into delivery. You have two delivery options, standard and accelerated. The safe option is to stick with standard. That's going to be the default in your account. Stick with that if you're just starting out. In other words, if you are bumping up against budget, what Google is going to do is spread your impressions out over the day at the rate that it thinks is going to get you to spend your budget. And this is why it gives itself that 20% wiggle room that we've just covered, because it needs that little bit of wiggle room to say, okay, I might not get this exactly right, but I'm going to try and spread, when I show your ads out, across the day to spend the budget that you've set. If you change this to accelerated, then ads start at a second past midnight and they run until you hit that budget and then they stop. So if you're running this for clients, you will often have clients phone you up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and say, what's going on with my ads? I can't see my ads. They're not running anymore. Have we run out of budget? It doesn't mean that you have run out of budget, but if you're set on accelerated, then that is probably an option. What may be the case is you're on standard, but you're bumping up against that budget, in which case Google is maybe only showing their ad 1 in 3 times throughout the day, and they happen to be on one of those times when it's not showing. If you want the ads to show more often, dear client, you need to up the budget. All right, a couple of advanced settings towards the bottom of the campaign settings screen. The first is ad scheduling. Now this gets a bit complicated, but you can, if you want, choose to show ads at different times of day and night. When you're starting out, you generally don't need to do this. Generally let your ads run 24/7 and then adjust them later on based on the data. Caveat to that is if you're short on money, if budgets are limited, then yep, by all means turn ads off during the night. But if you're not bumping up against budgets, I would leave your ads running during the night, because generally competition's a bit less, you're going to pay less click cost wise, conversion rates can be identical to during the day. Now, it depends on the market. Some industries you get really junky traffic at night. Other industries you get really good quality. We've got a client that sells beds. Now, if someone is searching for a new bed at 4 a.m., it's probably because they're very pissed off with the one they've got, and they're probably more in the market to buy a new one. So we don't turn his ads off during the night because we can get some good sales during the night. So use the data to decide. Obviously, if you're pushing traffic to a website, if your main thing is phone calls and you only man the calls during the day, then you might want to use scheduling. And then once you've set it all up, it looks like that. It gives you that little visual at the top of showing when your ads are showing, and you can adjust things accordingly from there. And you can have that be, on or off, on or off, on or off, I believe up to 6 times during a day. When you're starting, 24/7 is fine. And this question came up last week when we talked about ads. I would always go for rotate indefinitely of these 4 options, because I want the most control that I can get. I don't want to put Google in charge. The one I might use is the second one down, optimize for conversions. I'd never use the other 2. So rotate definitely. That gives me better data for my split test, because every single ad group in your account now has 2 ads in it and always will from now on. Occasionally you might use optimize for conversions. And then there are 4 other options sitting in the advanced section. Frequency cap, which we'll cover in module 7. That's if you're running your display ads. Experiment. Do not use experiment. AdWords Campaign Experiment, or ACE, is anything but ACE. It's terrible. It will do strange things to your stats. Don't use it. IP exclusion. I've seen maybe 1% of AdWords advertisers use that. If you want to stop ads showing to a particular IP address, you can do so. Know that the option's there. You'll probably never use it. And DSA, that's where you go to set the website or the group of pages that you want to show your DSA ads to. Bid modifiers, glass of water. All right, I guess it's much harder without Brian. Bid modifiers. All right, this is the very unintuitive way that you can adjust your bids in certain situations. You can either increase or decrease bids by a percentage, and Google gives you a little helpful guide of telling you what your bid is about to turn into. Now, all of the bid modifiers that I'm about to cover are all in the range of plus 900% to minus 90%. So a $1 bid with a plus 900% bid modifier turns into a $10 bid. A $1 bid with minus 90% turns into a 10-cent bid. The one exception to this was when Google announced enhanced campaigns and introduced bid modifiers. Everything was minus 90 to plus 900 except for mobile, which has a different range, which is minus 100. Well, technically speaking, it's plus 300 to minus 90, but you also have the option of minus 100. You can't do minus 99 or minus 98. It's anywhere on the range of plus 300 to minus 90 or minus 100. Now, minus 100 is the incredibly wonderful, intuitive way of saying turn mobile off. So remember before I said you can't have a mobile-only campaign anymore. Well, you can have a desktop and tablet-only campaign by turning mobile off. In the campaign settings that we just went through, there is no option there to do it by device anymore. You have to, well, I'll show you in just a second, but you have to set your mobile bid modifier to minus 100%, which means off. Very geeky way of saying turn mobile off. All right, so there's essentially three and a fourth one that I'll touch on. Geography first. So you can change your bid by location. So I've already said that if you want to show different ads in different locations, i.e. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, or US and UK, if you want to change the ad, then you need separate campaigns for each location. If, however, you want to show ads, let's say you want to show ads across the whole of the states, in the past, if you wanted to bid more in Chicago, then you would have to do that by splitting the Chicago traffic out. It's a bit like peel and stick, but on a bigger scale. You'd have to split the Chicago traffic out of your main campaign, create a new Chicago campaign just to change the bids. Google said, no, we're going to get rid of that. You can just modify the bid for a particular location inside that one existing campaign. And this is how you do it. First step, we need to check our data. So to do that, we're going to go to the dimensions report. I'll show you exactly how to do that in a second. The second step is we then have to add those locations that we want to bid differently. We actually have to add those to our campaign. And then we get to add the bid modifier. So first things first, we go to our dimensions tab. You can see across the top there. Then when we choose on the drop-down box, on the far left, second row down, view geographic location. That's the one we want. And then it's going to give you a whole stack of data. What I generally do here is come into this level of detail option, and the columns down here, I remove everything except region. So let's say we're looking at the states. I'm going to start by saying, show me the data one state at a time, a line for each state. Well, that's region, so it looks like this when you're done. So I've got a line for California, line for Florida, line for New York. If I choose town or city or metro area or most specific location, then I'm going to get way more granular detail than is actually useful to me. Unless you're doing hundreds and hundreds of conversions a day, then you might be able to bid down to that level of very granular detail. But for the vast majority of us, bidding differently at the state level is a vast improvement and is good enough. So this account has an average CPA of $10.21. So I've highlighted there in red some of the good ones. I know, very intuitive color choice. Go with it. So here's a whole bunch of cheaper than average states where we're getting locations. And in blue at the bottom, a couple of locations that are more expensive than normal. So I might now want to bid differently in those locations. Now, I'm going to give you a little formula. We're going to do a little bit of maths on how you figure that out. So, cast your eye. Before we get to that, cast your eye on two lines here. Top line in the top red box, Arizona, $8. Oh no, sorry, I didn't pick Arizona, did I? I picked Nevada, but I've labeled it wrong on the next screen. Genius. All right. Bottom red box, Nevada, and the bottom line, Colorado. Nevada 662, Colorado 1819. Probably could have got away with that. Lied to you. Whatever. I made a mistake. It shouldn't say AZ, it should say NZ. Or whatever the hell Nevada is, NV. Right, Nevada, never mind. The formula. Average divided by the CPA for that location. And if you want to choose Nevada and call it AZ, that's absolutely fine with me. Average divided by the CPA for that location minus 1. So the minus 1 just turns it into a number, and yes, okay, technically times by 100, get a percentage. Cheaper than average, 662. Run it through my little formula here. I come up with a bid modifier of 54% plus 54%. If I times 662 by 54%, I will end up at 1021. So I'm saying these leads are much cheaper than my average. I'm very happy with my average. I'm more than happy to get paid $10.21 for a lead. So let's increase how much we spend on traffic in Nevada by 54%. On average, that should get us close to paying about $10.21. Now, of course, in the real world, it'll never work out exactly, but you got to start somewhere, so we might as well start with a formula. Now, Colorado, which is CO, was more expensive than the average state. It was $18.19. So we have our average divided by our CPA for that location, minus 1, and in this case we end up with minus 44%. So again, if we were to multiply $18.19 by minus 44%, we would end up at $10.21. So we want a bit less in Colorado because that's too expensive right now. Now, yes, you can do this at the city level. In the States, you can do this at the zip code level if you really want, but you're not going to have, for the most part, if you're on this call, I suspect you're not going to have, because you're probably not running $1 million account, enough conversions to have any meaningful data to make decisions at that tiny level. So state level's probably good enough. So we've identified the two states that we want to change, Nevada and Colorado. We go into our campaign settings, which you can see on the top row, and then the locations tab. So under the settings, you've got 4 places. All settings, which is what we've been working on up until now on this call, and then we've got locations, schedule, and devices. We're obviously changing bids and changing settings for locations, so that's where we go. But we can see under there that this campaign only has 1 location. We're bidding the same across the whole of the United States. We don't have the option to bid differently for Nevada or Colorado yet. So the first thing we need to do is to go back into, I see the big red location button there, that takes us back into the picker that we had from before. You can choose to use advanced search if you want, and that'll bring up the map, but just for the sake of clarity and actually calling the state by the right name, you can see I've now added Colorado and Nevada as additional locations. Now again, targeting the whole of the states, obviously that includes Colorado and Nevada, so we are already showing ads there. I need to add those as additional targets in order to change the bid. Still with me? Once I've done that, now I can go back to my campaign settings and my locations, and under that bid adjustment column, I can now add in my adjustment, which was plus 54% for Nevada, minus 44% for Colorado. I know that seems like a whole lot of work, but really it's not. Once you get used to this, it's very, very quick. One option you have is, instead of targeting the whole of the states in your campaign settings, you can target all 50 states, and then they'll all be there ready for you when you want to change the bid. So if you think that you're going to go do that, you could set the campaign up differently from the start and set it up as a collection of states rather than the whole country. All right, we've covered this already. Bid modified by device, which basically means you're allowed to change the bid for mobiles. Again, computers, tablets, joined at the hip, can't do anything about that. They are the same in Google's eyes. You can then bid mobile up or down. Remember I said from plus 300% to minus 90%, or you can decrease the bid by 100%, which turns mobile off. And this is where you do it. Settings tab, devices sub-tab, and then look for that bid adjustment option next to mobile devices. Click on that, decrease by 100. If mobile is important to you, bid it up by 50%, or use that brand new call-only campaign that we talked about at the start that was launched, whatever that was, 3 or 4 days ago. And then the other option you have is to bid differently by time. So think back to the schedule that we set up a moment ago. If you have a schedule, same deal as before. Until you have a schedule, you can't bid differently, just like with locations. But if you have a schedule, if you've already added those date and time slices that you want to show ads during, then you have the option of bidding those differently. In this case, you can see I've just added plus 15% for all of those. Obviously, you could have each day be different if you want. We'll talk about tools and hacks in Module 8. There's a great tool that I use. It's called Optimizer, created by a guy called Fred Valles, who was the AdWords evangelist for most of his 10 years at Google, worked on the AdWords team for most of that time, worked on the quality score team, is a freaking legend when it comes to AdWords, has built this tool called Optimizer. I will give you much more details about that in week 8, but if you can't wait, you can go search for it. Tell them I sent you, and you'll get 10% off, I think, is the deal they've done for all of my community members and students. So welcome to the club. You get a deal. And RLSA, which we mentioned before, again, we are going to touch on this in Module 7. And this is where you create that. So just for the sake of completeness, just so that it's all here together with all of the other bid modifiers, I'll touch on this even though we haven't talked about how to set RLSA up yet. But this one is actually under the Audiences tab. It's the only one that's different. It's not in campaign settings. So you first add an audience, i.e. people that visited but did not buy. And I say, okay, if they're still searching, then I want to bid this up by 20%. Again, we'll get more into that in Module 7. All right, bid stacking. So these bid modifiers, bid mods, are what's the word I'm looking for? Geometric. They multiply. So let's run through an example, because this is really important to understand. If you were to start with a $4 bid, and you had for this particular, let's say, campaign, a bid mod for mobile of minus 20%, but this person was searching on a Monday, and you've set your ad schedule to up the bids 200% on Monday, because you've seen all this quality traffic that always comes in on the Monday after the weekend. You were getting really, really cheap leads. You ran it through the formula, and so you increased your bids plus 200%. In other words, times 3. This person was also searching for London, and you've got some location bid mods in your account to say if someone is searching in London, then up the bid by 50%. And you've also got, because you're getting all funky and advanced, and you've gone through the whole course and you waited for Module 7, you've got some RLSA running, and you're doubling the bid if somebody has been to your website in the last 7 days. All very standard. What is really important to realize is that all of these bid modifiers multiply together. So the first thing we have to do is to turn those percentages into a number. So we've got $4 times 0.8, which is minus 20%. So it's effectively, think of it's 1 minus the 0.2. So minus 20% bid modifier becomes 0.8. A plus 200% bid modifier becomes 3. It's 1 plus 2. 50%, 1 plus 0.5, 1.5, and 100% bid modifier becomes 2. So I do all of that, do the maths. All of a sudden, I'm bidding $28.80, where you might have thought you were bidding $4, give or take a little bit. It was up and down a little bit. Mondays, London, last 7 days. Maybe it's 6, 7. You do the maths. Turns out you're bidding almost $30. Now, there is a fail-safe in here. I have heard people talk about you can bid up to $1,000 or something like that. The maximum bid modifier is going to be plus 900%. So even if you had mobile on what the maximum there is 300%, and you were bidding up Mondays by 900%, super aggressive, and you were bidding up London by 900%, and you were bidding up RLSA by 900%, you're not going to end up with a $4,000 bid at the bottom. Google's going to say, all right, clearly you're not quite realizing how many bid modifiers you've got, and the maximum modification that can be made to any individual bid is plus 900%, i.e. a $4 bid can't go any higher than $40. It's still pretty different from where you started, but at least there is a fail-safe in place. But very important to understand how these bid modifiers work together. And the last section of the day, so you've probably got another 20 minutes or so, because I want to go through this in a bit of detail and talk about now building out everything that we've got to so far. And the first option is to use the interface. Now this is the easy option. This is the one that you've already been playing with, particularly if you're fairly new to AdWords, but it is slow. The other option I'm going to give you in a moment, you will love, particularly if you're doing this on a regular basis, i.e. for clients, or you're running bigger accounts and bigger budgets, and you're not just having a quick look 15 minutes a month. If you're only looking 15 minutes a month, stick with this. So for this method, we would add, let's say we're going to take your big list of keywords that you built 2 weeks ago and your ad ideas that you wrote last week. Now we want to chuck them all together. So we're going to open up our account, hit the big red campaign button and choose Search Network only. Remember, we never ever use Search Network with Display Select. Yeah, horrible. I create a new ad group and Google prompts me to add my first ad when I do that. Scroll a bit further down the page and I can add all of my keywords in there. So if you have got them on a piece of paper, now's the time you need to type them all in. If you did all your keyword research with an Excel spreadsheet to hand, awesome, you can cut and paste them all into here. One ad group at a time. So we went through a number of different options of how you could build this, and I said that the way that we build it is one keyword with 3 different match types, but one keyword per ad group. So you can see that if you've got 200 keywords and you want to build 200 ad groups, this is going to take you a week and it's not going to be much fun. Now if you've already got something running, then you can obviously come into your keyword tab and you can change keywords down there. So you can either edit an existing keyword, you can add new keywords. And again, you do that one keyword at a time. You can add a new ad. We've said that we're always going to be split testing. Every single ad group needs to have 2 ads in it. To do that, if you're doing it the slow way, you're going to create an ad every time you create a new ad group, but you're going to need to come into here, find that big red button under the Ads tab, and add a new text ad to every ad group. Excuse me. Again, unless you've only got 2 or 3 groups, this is going to be a very slow and very laborious process. Not much fun. You come in, add a new text ad, write a new ad, and save that. And ad extensions, we talked all about those last week. Remember, you're going to add your ad extensions to every campaign. You're going to add call-outs every campaign, every search campaign. You're going to add site links to every search campaign. And you're probably going to add call extensions and maybe location extensions as well. And then you're going to go set the bids. 2 places you can set bids. You can either set bids at the ad group level, and so then that bid, let's say 80 cents, then applies to all keywords within that ad group. Or you can dig into the keyword level, which is what you can see here, and you can set individual ads for each individual keyword. If you do that, it overrides the ad group level bid, and that's the bid that applies to that particular keyword. Now you can do a bulk edit, which is what I'm showing you here. I've ticked the top box right underneath the red keywords button. There's a checkbox there. I've ticked that, which highlights all keywords in, well, all keywords that I'm looking at on the screen, be that the group I'm looking at or the campaign that I'm looking at. So it depends what I've chosen on the tree view on the left-hand side where it says brand. In this case, I've ticked all keywords in this particular campaign. I've chosen edit and then change max CPC bids. I then have a few options here of how to change these bids. I can either set all of these max. Now, obviously, you can do this one keyword at a time. I'm just showing you a couple of little ways to speed things up and how you can do this in bulk. You can choose to set all of them to a particular amount, which is a dollar amount. You can choose to increase or decrease, which I'll show you here, by either a particular percentage or a particular dollar amount. So you can say increase all of my bids by 10% or increase all of my bids by 50 cents or 20p or whatever that might be for you. And I also have a couple of options down the bottom of raising all of my bids to either the estimated first page bids, i.e. what Google believes I need to be bidding in order to get my ad onto the first page results, or raise them up to the top of page bid, which is what Google thinks I need to be bidding in order to show my ads in the top 3 premium spots. Use those two with caution. I would suggest that you keep control over this, and you're probably not going to use the bulk update very often, but it's good to know that it's there. Now, if you're spending, I'm going to say, more than $1,000 a month, and definitely if you're running anything for clients, then you need to know about AdWords Editor. So AdWords Editor is a program that you can download for free. Just go search for AdWords Editor, download. You'll find a page, download that, install it. They've just had a massive, massive interface change. Version 11 is the current version. So if you haven't used AdWords Editor for a while, this is a fantastic time to get back into it. If you have been using it, sort of maybe a bit half-heartedly, you're going to get a bit of a shock. It is completely different. Now, we could spend another 3 or 4 hours talking about AdWords Editor. Years ago, I created a training program around that. If there's huge demand for it, then go throw some requests in the Google Plus community and let me know in there, and I'll talk Brian into we'll do a mastermind webinar for that. And then, of course, once I've done it for mastermind, then I can go and chuck it in the Google Plus community for all of us, and we'll spend an hour or so going through all of the different things you can do in Editor. But their help center is superb now. There's a lot of videos in here, so well worth coming into here. Just search for AdWords Editor Help Center, come into here and spend, I would say, a good hour or two going through this, watching the videos with your account open in Editor on one side, and just go play. That was the way I learned way back in the day. It's great for doing things faster. Now, to show you a little bit of what it can do, I'm going to show you how to combine the spreadsheets that you've already got with your keywords and your ads with AdWords Editor. I'm going to show you a very simple example, but hopefully it will show you the power of Editor and also give you a way to much, much more quickly build the stuff that you've been working on for the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to give you 2 short URLs for 2 Google Docs that I've created for you. Now, please, when you go to this Google Doc, immediately go save a copy of that into your Google Drive. Everybody's got access to Google Drive because you're running AdWords, you've got a Google account. So everyone's got access to Google Drive. I thought it'd be far easier to do this so everything lives live on the cloud and you don't have to download Excel because not everybody has Excel installed, but everybody has access to Google Drive for free. So go to that short URL. That will take you to this page. What I've got on each of these 2 sheets that I'm going to share with you, one for keywords and one for ads. Probably could have put all of that on one sheet, but maybe that would have been more confusing. I'm not sure. I've got 2 tabs on there. One is the example tab. So this data that I'm showing you here is included in the spreadsheet that I'm giving you. And then there's another tab where you can go put your own data so that you can copy and paste your own data into AdWords Editor. I suppose if you like, you can always come back, watch this video later on, and copy me exactly as I go through with this dummy data if you want, and then just obviously delete it out of your account. Don't run any ads on this. But my hope is that you'll use these templates so you can go build your own campaigns. So what are we looking at here? Well, what I started with here was a list of keywords. Now what I want to do, so I'm going to work backwards from right to left. So first thing I need is a column. Now it doesn't really matter what order you have these columns in, so maybe that would be more intuitive if I showed the keyword on the left-hand side, because that's where I'm starting. But you've started with a list of keywords. You've done that. You've already gone and done your homework, and you have a big long list of keywords that you think you want to use. Don't worry about match types yet. Your next job is then to group those keywords into small groups of similar themes. So you can see I've put all of the Perry Marshall keywords into a Perry Marshall group. I think I may have spelled his name wrong. I'm not sure. I've got all of Brian Todd keywords in a Brian Todd group. And we've thrown Jack in there as well, because we don't want to forget Jack. And we've got a Jack Bourne ad group. You can see the campaign for all of these is the same. I'm using my usual notation of type and geo and network. So brand, USA, and S for search. So once I've done the work in my spreadsheet, I've grouped my keywords, and I've picked my new campaign name. Now I can go over to AdWords Editor. Now here's the cool thing about Editor. We don't need to go build a campaign, a shell of a campaign first, and then go build these 3 different ad groups. And this is a very small, short example. It could be 200 ad groups for you. We don't need to build all of those ad groups first, and then individually, one by one, go and shove those keywords into those groups. With Editor, if we start with keywords and we paste this list in, but we tell it about the campaign and ad group, but we're pasting a list of keywords in, it will automatically go and create the ad groups that it needs, because we've given it the names here. We said ad group column, these are the names of the ad groups I want to create, and the campaign column, this is the one campaign that I want you to create as well. So please, in one go, create a campaign, create 3 ad groups, and create these 7 keywords and put them in the right place. So we come into AdWords Editor. Again, I'm not going to cover all of the basics of how you get to this point. Go to the AdWords Editor Help Center for that. Otherwise, we'll be here for another 2 hours, and it's already getting very late in Europe. Apologies for that. Come into Editor. Bottom left, you need to go to the Keywords section, and then you want to look for that Make Multiple Changes. Now, obviously, this may be blank when you come in. Don't worry, I've just blanked out the data here. Make Multiple Changes. That brings up this screen. Very, very, very important that you choose top left, the destination, i.e. where am I going to stick all of this information that you're about to tell me about. You choose the option that says my data includes columns for campaigns and ad groups. And then you press the paste from clipboard, because back here you've highlighted all of this data, including the top row. You've highlighted all of this, and you've hit copy to clipboard. You flick across to editor, and you hit paste from clipboard. And because we've labeled our columns over in Google Docs, it then says, oh yeah, I get it. Campaign is campaign, ad group is ad group, and keyword is keyword. I'm happy with that. You're happy with that. I understand what all that data means. Now hit the big process button, and Google says, I've done it all for you. I've added 7 keywords in 3 ad groups and 1 campaign. Happy days. That took 3 seconds. Finish and review changes. And now here it is in our account. We've got a brand USA S campaign. I can see we've got 3 ad groups. Don't worry about the splats. We'll get to those. And I can see that it's added 7 keywords for us. Now we do a little bit of tidying up. There are 2 types of splats, they're called, in AdWords Editor. Red ones are bad, orange are informational. So first of all, let's go sort the red one out. You can see I've got a red splat next to my new campaign. If I click on my campaign, and I can see this error across the top here. Your campaign daily budget is invalid. Change your daily budget to a non-zero value. They couldn't get any geekier if they tried, could they? A non-zero value. And you can see the red splat top right next to budget. Once I stick a number in there, a non-zero value, then the red splat goes away and Google says, yep, I'm happy with your campaign. Now, there's lots of other settings there. We're not going to go into those right now. You can figure all of that out in the AdWords Editor Help Center if you want. Now we go fix the next splat. And you can see I've now got two different types of warnings here. I've got your ad group contains no active ads, and your ad groups don't have any bids. Well, we haven't got to ads yet. Can't solve that bit yet, but let's solve the bid bit now. I go into the ad group section of AdWords Editor. I hit Control-A to highlight all of my ad groups in this particular campaign, and I stick a bid in the default max CPC box. So in this case, I want to set a default bid of $1 for all of the ad groups. Now again, you might choose to bid individually for different keywords if you want, but you need something at the ad group level just as a default, just as a placeholder. So that's how you do it. So now, we've got a campaign built. We've got 3 new ad groups. We've got a bunch of keywords in there. I now need to go add some ads. So bottom left, I go to the text ads section, and again, make multiple changes. And now we go to our second Google Doc spreadsheet. Again, there's the shortcode, and I'm going to give you both shortcodes again at the end, and they're both already loaded into the Google Plus community. So if you're panicking, they're already there for you, along with all of the slides, along with the mind map. It's already loaded up. So now we need a little bit more data, because in order to create one ad inside of one ad group, inside of a campaign, we need to add these 7 columns. Again, you've got the spreadsheet all done for you, already loaded up in the template. So you can see here, top row, I've got Perry headline V1, Perry description 1 V1, I've got D2 V1, I need a display URL, and I need a destination URL. So the same 5 fields we need for any ad, but I'm also adding campaign and ad group. And because we've said we will always, always, always have 2 ads running, at least 2 ads running, for every ad group, that's all the V2 stuff down the bottom. I can put them all on the same spreadsheet. That's fine. What Editor is going to see when it opens this up, it's going to see, okay, I need to go add this ad to the Perry Marshall group, this ad to the Brian group, and this ad to the Jack group. Oh, I've got another ad I need to add to the Perry group, and Brian, and Jack. And so we will end up with 2 ads, version 1 and version 2, in each of our ad groups. So 3 ad groups, 2 ads, 6 lines of data. Pretty easy. I don't think that's too confusing. Now, I need to highlight all of that and copy it to the clipboard. I come back into AdWords Editor, where that make multiple changes to my ads. Again, really, really important that you check top left that you choose the option My Data Includes Columns for campaigns and groups, and then paste from clipboard. And because we've got all of the column headings right in the template, all done for you, then you won't need to worry about adjusting any of that. It's all going to go to the right place automatically for you. You're welcome. Campaign group headline D1, D2, and what you can't see is obviously display and description. Display and destination URL as well. So you paste that in, hit process. Again, it gives you the confirmation. Yep, I've added 6 text ads. Now this time it hasn't added a campaign. It hasn't added 3 ad groups because they're already there from when we created the keywords. It had to build all of those for you when you added the keywords, but now that they're there, it doesn't. So just good visual confirmation there that we've got 6 text ads and nothing else. We finish and review. Now this is also there last time, but let's learn one thing at a time here. When you go back and finish and review, you must hit keep or reject at the top there. A lot of other options within AdWords Editor won't exist until you keep or reject those changes. Now, assuming you've done everything right, you eyeball it, you're going to hit the keep button. But if things aren't working for you in AdWords Editor, shortly after doing something like this, it's probably because you've forgotten to keep those proposed changes, which is why they're showing there in green. Keep the changes and then you're all good. So that's the much faster way. Probably just saved you 100 hours of work if you've done your homework and you have 100 or 200 keywords and some ads to add. Yes, obviously you still need to type all of that in, but this is a much faster way to go build those accounts. And we will talk at some point, and a lot of this may be on another training, of how to do many more things in AdWords Editor. But it is a wonderful tool. Again, if you're spending any significant amount of time doing AdWords, then you really want to get used to AdWords Editor, get to know it well, and the best way to do that is just to go play. So there are your two shortcodes again for the keyword spreadsheet and the ad spreadsheet. And again, just a reminder, we will talk much more about managing existing accounts and existing data when we get to week 8. Next week, we will cover, or sorry, not next week, we've got a week off next week because I'm away speaking. So you've got a catch-up week to go through all of this stuff, to maybe catch up on the keyword research or writing the ads from the last couple of weeks, and to go build your first campaign if you haven't got that up and running, or to go maybe rebuild an existing campaign. When we meet again in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about quality score in some detail. We're going to talk about landing pages and Google shopping campaigns. And that will all be in a couple of weeks. Now, if I stop sharing my screen here, I may be able to open up the question pad, and now I get to see a whole bunch of whys and yeses and loads of those from earlier on. Fantastic, thank you very much. Good to know that you could all hear all of that for the last hour and a half. Sorry I couldn't see that before. All right, I will try and just cover these very quickly. I probably won't get to everything here. I'll just have a quick skim through this. If you have a question that's bugging you and that I haven't got to, then please go to the Google community and ask it there. I've been logging in every day. Some of you have noticed I've been answering within a couple of seconds on some of those. Ask your questions there. I will get to everything there over time. All right. What if I have 3 countries and 2 networks from Ken? Do I have 6 campaigns? You don't have to, but yes, that's how I would set it up. If I've got 3 countries, Australia, US, UK, and I want a search campaign for each and maybe a display campaign for each, then yes, I would have 6 individual campaigns. That's going to get you the best control, easiest data to manage. That's going to be the best result for you. When I have a campaign for doors and one for windows, does it mean that most of the campaigns then only have 1 ad group? Great question, yep. No. In my doors campaign, I'm going to have a number of ad groups. They're all going to be related to doors. One might be entrance doors, one might be front doors, one might be fly screens that might be in there, or security doors. All of my doors stuff, all of my keywords that I discovered during my keyword research for my doors area of my website, I'm still going to break those into separate ad groups, but all of those ad groups are going to live in one place, which is my doors campaign. Same then deal for windows. The reason for doing that is only if I want control over those budgets. If I don't care about budgets, if everything's unlimited, I can put all of my door ad groups and all of my window ad groups. I can lump all of those into the one campaign called doors and windows. That's fine too. All right. Can I explain the whitelisting process? No, I can't. So this is for display select. If you have a Google rep, you can ask them to whitelist you for display select. If you don't have a Google rep, you don't have that option yet. I will talk more about, yes, Joshua, I will talk more about display select in week 7. A cheat sheet for reading metrics and understanding metrics. We're going to talk more about that, Cameron, in Module 8. And how to manage based on the data. That's what Module 8 is all about, of the ongoing management of your accounts and I don't. Apologies that you had difficulty understanding BidMod. Maybe go back through the slides and go back through the video of this afterwards. It is not a very intuitive process, I would agree. I've tried to make it as simple as I can. If you're still having problems, give me a specific example in the Google Plus community, and I will do my best to keep explaining it until we find a way that it makes sense for you. Where would you add the negative keywords? I'm sorry, John, I thought I had covered that when we talked about negs in Module 2. Maybe I didn't. In the interface or in AdWords Editor, you can do it in both. In the interface, when you go to the Keywords tab, which is the slow way of adding new keywords, remember, scroll all the way to the bottom of that page, and you'll see the section right at the bottom of that page for negatives. And remember, we talked about the different types. Generally speaking, you're just going to need to add campaign level negative keywords. So you can do that in the interface or in AdWords Editor. Okay, Joshua said there might be a problem with those spreadsheets not showing up properly in Drive. No one else has said that yet, Joshua, but okay, I will try and fix that. Sorry, Robert. Yes, there wasn't much of a break during that because that was an hour and 40, and with no Brian, I kind of figured it wouldn't be very cool if I just sat there and said nothing with 5 minutes in the middle. So yes, apologies if your brains are a bit melted at this point. Don't forget, you've got the slides, you've got the videos, and you've got me in the Google Plus community. We can go through anything that maybe didn't quite make sense. Do I recommend running text ads against Google Shopping ads? I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Andrew. I'm going to assume you mean as well as, in which case, yes. But non-brand search for e-commerce is pretty hard to get right. So if you're running e-commerce, wait for next module, we'll talk about Google Shopping. I would start, so e-commerce, my top 3 go-to campaigns for e-commerce would be brand, Google Shopping, and remarketing. So I wouldn't actually do non-brand search for an e-commerce site at the beginning. I do the other easier ones to get right. Cassandra, g'day. So you've got the entire US as one location, and then also a few states that you want to bid more. Is it okay to have those locations in addition to the entire US? Yes, you have to. You have to have both. So you keep the entire US in there, because that keeps the rest of the campaign running. And then you're going to have the option of adding those additional states in so that you can control the bids for those states, either up or down. That overlap that's there will not cause you to compete against yourself or anything like that in any way. All right, I think that's pretty much all of the questions. Apologies if I may have missed one along the way there. I think that's the majority of them. We will be back in 2 weeks when I get back from speaking in Sydney, and we will go through quality scores, landing pages, and shopping. Thanks for sticking with me. Almost everybody did. That's pretty good effort for 90 minutes of constant, or what was it? No, more of constant fire hose of info. I'll see you in the community and answer any additional questions then, and I'll just double check Drive now and make sure that that is working so that you can get those template files. Thanks, guys. See you again soon.